In American radio in the 1940s, a woman could be hired into a job on the understanding that the job was not hers. She could run the control board, read the news, direct the programming, and sell the airtime. The terms of her leaving were settled before the terms of her work. She was not unqualified. She was temporary by arrangement, and everyone in the building knew it. The stations called it wartime necessity. It was a loan. There is the law at number 4 that promised a returning man his old chair back and promised the woman sitting in it nothing at all. And by the time we reach number 1, a woman will explain why her own job in radio was secure, in one sentence that gives the whole system away. Hit the subscribe button. This is a documented record. Number 20, the daytime shelf. In 1947, the United States Department of Labor published a study of women working in American radio. It reported that apart from musical and dramatic programs, a woman's main chances in broadcasting were on daytime programs for women and children. That was not written as a criticism. It was written as career advice for young women thinking of entering the field. Daytime carried real audiences and real money. The soap and flour accounts lived there. But the evening hours held the network prestige, the network budgets, and the careers that led somewhere. And those hours belonged to men. A woman could be the most successful broadcaster in her city inside her allotted stretch of the clock, and never be considered for the part of the day the industry actually cared about. The clock was the ceiling. Nobody had to defend it, because nobody who might have objected was ever asked. Number 19, the announcerette. The same federal study recorded, without apology, that the American public had turned a deaf ear to women announcers. Then it noted one exception. In certain sections of the South, it reported, announcerettes were well received. Announcerette. The industry had built a diminutive for the job, and the United States government printed it as ordinary vocabulary. The word did work that no written rule had to do. A man who read copy on the air was an announcer, a job with a name, a rate, and a ladder attached to it. A woman who read the same copy into the same microphone was handed a smaller version of the same word. She was not refused the work. She was given a lesser name for it, and that name appeared in a federal career guide written to encourage her. Nobody had to bar her. The language had already been adjusted. Number 18, the only door in. The employment manager for the National Broadcasting Company was a woman named Helen Corday. Asked how a young woman should get ahead in radio, she gave the honest answer: start as a secretary. She was not being dismissive. She was describing the building she worked in. NBC had exactly 2 women working as sales representatives at the time, and both of them had started at the company as secretaries. There was no other route. Margaret Cuthbert, one of the highest-ranking women at the same network, gave aspiring broadcasters the same advice. Learn typing, learn shorthand, learn filing and bookkeeping. Whatever else you study, learn the skills that keep an office running. Men were hired into radio to do radio. Women were hired into radio to type, and a small number of them were later permitted to do radio. The stenography test was the audition. Nobody called it that. That is what it was. Number 17, the softer half of the newscast. In 1943, CBS put a daily news program on the air with 2 people reading it. The radio actress Bernardine Flynn and the announcer Durward Kirby shared a 15-minute daytime newscast paid for by a shortening company. They did not share the news. Kirby was given the straight news items, the wire copy, the war, the events of the day. Flynn was given the human interest material. The split was not written into a contract. It did not need to be. 2 professionals sat at the same desk in front of the same audience, and one of them handled what the network considered news, while the other handled what the network considered the rest. Flynn was working in news at all because men were away. She was handed the portion of the job the network was comfortable releasing, and she was handed it by people who could take it back. The microphone was shared. The authority was not. Number 16, the one engineer. The Federal Communications Commission is the agency that licenses American broadcasting. It decides who may operate a transmitter and on what terms. In the late 1940s, it employed roughly 1,400 people, and more than 500 of them were women. The great majority of those women were clerical and stenographic staff. 5 were confidential assistants to the commissioners, 2 were hearing examiners, and 1, a single woman in an agency of 1,400, was a radio engineer. This was the regulator. This was the body that held every station in the country to a public interest standard and could take a license away for failing it. Inside its own offices, the technical work of radio was a male occupation with exactly one exception, and the exception was rare enough to be counted in a government report. The agency that policed the industry looked exactly like the industry. Nobody at the commission appears to have found that worth a remark. Number 15, the membership her manager had to grant. The National Association of Broadcasters, the industry's trade body, ran a women's division. It was organized in 1942, it grew from 35 members to more than 1,000, and it was the only national professional network women in radio had. There was a condition on joining. To become an active member, a woman had to work at a station belonging to the association, and she had to be designated by her station manager. Read that again. Her professional association could not be joined by application. It had to be conferred. The man who employed her decided whether she was permitted to belong to the organization of her own colleagues, and he could simply decline to put her name forward. Membership in a trade group sounds like a small thing. It is where information travels. It is where jobs are heard about before they are posted, and where a woman finds out what other stations pay. The profession's only room for women had a lock on the door, and her employer kept the key. Notice what none of that required. No station had to post a rule. No network had to write a policy barring women from the evening hours, the announcing booth, the engineering bench, or the trade association. The shape was made out of vocabulary, of hiring routes, of who was permitted to nominate whom. It looked like custom rather than exclusion, and custom is very hard to sue. What follows is what happened when the men left, and radio found out how much of this it had never actually needed. Number 14, the probation. In 1942, KFRC in San Francisco needed a news reporter. The men who would ordinarily have filled the job were gone, so the station turned to a woman already on its own staff, Ruth Anderson, who until then had been used as a soap opera actress. She became the only woman news reporter in San Francisco. Her 15-minute program ran 6 days a week with a department store paying for it. She was given the job on a probationary basis. That is the detail worth holding on to. The station had a hole in its schedule, a capable adult already in the building, and a war on, and it still put her in the chair on trial. The probation was not a judgment about her competence, which the station had spent years assessing. It was a description of the arrangement, and the arrangement was provisional. The men were away. Her job was on approval. Everyone involved understood both of those things, including her. Number 13, the sponsor she had to find herself. In 1948, a new station, WHOD, went on the air in Homestead, Pennsylvania. A woman named Mary Dudley applied for work there. She had trained at a radio school in Pittsburgh and graduated with high honors. She was not hired. She went to the station manager, and he gave her his terms. He would hire her if she found a sponsor for her own program. Consider what that means. Every man on that staff was hired to do a job, and selling the airtime was the station's business to worry about. She was told to go out and raise the money for her own employment before the station would employ her. She did it. She found a sponsor. On the 1st of August 1948, she went on the air as Mary D., and she is generally recognized as the first black woman in the United States with a daily radio show. They gave her 15 minutes because they did not know how she would be received. She had already paid for the airtime. The doubt was free. Number 12, the part she was not allowed to play. Network radio in the 1940s had a famous black character. Beulah was a maid, she was the comic center of her own segments, and by 1945 she was one of the better-known voices in American broadcasting. Beulah was played by a white man named Marlon Hurt. There are many ways to describe what that arrangement did. The employment fact is the simplest one. Here was a steady, well-paid, nationally broadcast role written for a black woman, and a network gave it to a man who was neither. Black actresses were available. Black actresses were working in theater companies and on local stations, and the networks knew where to find them. The role that appeared to have been written for them was closed, and it was closed by a casting decision at a national network with no rule behind it and no explanation required of anyone. The character was a black woman. The paycheck went to a white man. Both of those facts were public, and neither was controversial. Number 11. The program that proved it. During the war, NBC broadcast a program called Now is the Time. It was a tribute to women serving in the armed forces, and it was the first coast-to-coast show the network had ever put on the air, prepared and produced entirely by women. Women wrote it. Women directed it. Women engineered it. Women handled the sound effects, which in live radio of that period meant running the equipment that made a program believable. Every technical job women were said to be unsuited for was performed on a national network, on schedule. It was presented as a tribute. A tribute is an occasion, and an occasion is something that does not happen on an ordinary Tuesday. The network had demonstrated on its own air that the staffing objection was not really a staffing objection, and then went on staffing exactly as it had before. The proof was broadcast to the entire country. The industry filed it under special programming. Number 10. The man who kept the door. Edward Klauber was one of the most powerful executives at CBS during the years the network built its news division. He did not want women correspondents. That is not an inference drawn later. It shaped who got hired. When a place opened, Klauber turned down Helen Kirkpatrick, a reporter who had already proved herself covering Europe for the Chicago Daily News and who had helped found a news publication in London. The job went to a man. Klauber's preference reached into his own offices as well. He kept only male secretaries. That last detail is the one that settles what kind of judgment was operating here. This was not a considered view about which reporters could carry a war story. A man who will not have a woman typing his letters is not conducting an assessment of anybody's journalism. One executive's taste became a network's hiring record. He never had to write it down anywhere. Number 9. The broadcast that told her to go home. In 1947, an American bestseller argued that a woman who wanted to work was attempting to be a man. It was called Modern Woman, The Lost Sex, and one of its authors was a psychiatrist named Marinia Farnham. Farnham took that argument onto network radio. On the March of Time, one of the most respected programs in American broadcasting, she told women who wanted to keep the jobs they had held during the war that their mental health would be in danger if they did not stop working. Sit with the position that puts a woman in. She is employed at a radio station. She is good at the work. And the industry she works for is transmitting, through her own equipment on her own frequency, a medical argument that continuing to do her job will make her ill. The pressure did not arrive as a memo from management. It arrived as programming on the medium she was helping to keep on the air. Everything so far has been pressure. Advice from an employment manager, a diminutive in a federal report, a casting decision, an executive's preference, a psychiatrist on a national program. None of it is a rule. None of it would have survived a courtroom, because none of it was ever written down anywhere a court could reach it. The remaining items are different. From here, the arrangement is in writing, and in one case, it is in federal law. Number 8, the half of the writing staff. Radio ran on script. Every commercial, every serial, every word spoken between records was written by somebody before it was said. During the war, when women's employment in broadcasting was at its highest, half of the staff writers at CBS were women. At NBC, the figure was 1/3. That is the clearest single measure of what the decade actually proved, because writing was the one part of radio where women were told they competed with men on equal terms. They were welcome in it. And the moment the industry genuinely needed people, they turned out to be available in numbers nobody had previously managed to find. The talent did not appear in 1942. The women who filled half of a network's writing staff had been in the country the entire time, qualified and not hired. A shortage of men is not the same thing as a discovery of women. The industry treated it as one and stopped looking the moment the shortage ended. Number 7. The jobs written out of the contract. By 1947, American broadcasting was expanding into television, and the official record of how it staffed that expansion is unusually direct. The Department of Labor reported that certain technical jobs in the new medium were closed to women, and it described how. Some of it was tacit agreement, meaning an understanding among the men who did the hiring, but not all of it. The report states that there were also contract agreements providing that those jobs would definitely exclude women. Not custom, not preference. Paper. Somewhere in the filing cabinets of American broadcasting there were signed documents specifying that a category of technical work was not open to half the population, and the federal government described this arrangement in a career guide published for young women considering the field. The guide's advice to a woman determined to do that work was that she would need a first-class engineering education. It did not mention that the education would not be enough. Number 6. The sentence in the survey. The most damning line ever written about women in the 1940s American radio came from the United States Department of Labor, and it is one sentence long. The department was describing the war years. During the war, it recorded, a few women went into control room work, which it called a masculine stronghold. Others became announcers, directors, sales and publicity representatives, and executives. Then the sentence turns. As the men returned from service, it says women faded out of these jobs. Faded. Not were dismissed. Not were replaced. Not were required to resign. Faded. As though a national reversal in the employment of thousands of women were a change in the weather. That verb is the whole thing. The federal government watched women enter every part of an industry, do the work for 4 years, and leave it again, and reach for a word that removed every decision and every decision maker from the account. Somebody did that to them. The report does not say who. Number 5. The resignation she signed first. Companies hiring women to replace men who were leaving for military service required those women to sign agreements. The agreement stated that once the men came back, the women would resign. Radio stations were among those companies. Broadcasting had the same problem as every other industry, staff disappearing into the draft and an expanding schedule to fill, and it reached for the same solution. So the sequence ran like this. A woman applied. She was assessed and found capable. She was offered the work. And then, as a condition of receiving it, she put her name to a document ending it. She did not resign because the work was too hard, or because she had somewhere better to be, or because she changed her mind about broadcasting. She resigned on her first day, in advance, in writing, for a reason that had nothing to do with her at all. The letter of resignation was not the end of her employment. It was part of the paperwork that began it. Number 4. The chair the law gave back. In September 1940, the United States created its first peacetime draft. The law that did it, the Selective Training and Service Act, contained a section about jobs. If a man was honorably released from the armed forces, was still able to do his old work, and applied within 40 days, his employer was required to restore him to his former position or to one of the same seniority, status, and pay. The obligation covered private employers and the federal government alike, and a division was set up to make sure it was honored. It is a decent law. Men were conscripted, and a country that takes a man's job from him by statute owes him something back. Here is what it did not contain. There was no provision of any kind for the person who had been doing that job in the meantime. She had no claim, no seniority, no notice, and no standing to object. The law gave him his position back. It never had to take hers away, because it had never granted her one. A statute, a signed agreement, a contract clause, and a federal survey that watched the whole thing happen and called it fading. Set them beside each other, and it stops looking like a series of separate decisions and starts looking like a machine, assembled out of ordinary parts, running exactly as designed. The last three items are about what the industry told itself while the machine ran. That is where this stops being about the war at all. Number 3, the reason they gave. When the war ended, the jobs in American radio went back to men. The reason the industry gave was that the men had families to support. That reason is worth taking apart, because it sounds almost reasonable. It assumes that the man returning had dependents and the woman leaving did not. Some of the women vacating those jobs were supporting households of their own. The industry had no way of knowing which ones, because the question was never put to the individual woman. It was answered in advance by category. It also assumes that supporting a family is a claim on a job. No man in radio was asked to prove he had one. The argument was never applied to him as a test. It was applied to her as a disqualification. Her wages fed people too. Nobody at any station was ever required to find out how many. Number 2, the word in her job title. In 1942, a Chicago broadcasting station owned by Balaban and Katz needed people. Its men were leaving. The station's director, Bill Eddy, hired a group of women to run it, and he gave them a name. He called them the Women's Auxiliary Television Technical Staff. Auxiliary. He took the word from the Wartime Women's Auxiliary Services, and it is the most honest job title in this entire record because it says the arrangement out loud. An auxiliary is a supplementary force. It exists alongside the real one, and it is stood down when the real one comes back. They ran cameras, control, and production. They kept the station's license alive and its schedule full for 5 years. One of them, Fran Harris, remembered how management had seen the experiment. The owners thought it might be possible, by the furthest reaches of the imagination, to train some girls to run the station. By 1946, women were the minority there, and men held the senior technical and programming posts. She was never told she was temporary. It was printed on the door. Number 1, the job no man wanted. Ruth Crane was director of women's activities at WMAL in Washington. She had been in radio since the 1920s. She had sold airtime, written publicity, handled traffic, and done public relations. And by the 1940s, she ran one of the most popular women's programs in the Capitol. She was asked, for a federal report, what she thought of her job. Her answer is the last thing in this record and the most important thing in it. She said the women's activities job was the most interesting and rewarding job in radio for a woman. She said it had prestige. She said it was exciting. She said it paid well. And she said it was non-competitive with men's jobs on the station. She meant that as a recommendation. She was telling young women where the secure ground was, and she was right. There is the arrangement, described by a woman living inside it, without complaint, as career advice. In American radio, a woman could have a real job, a good job, a permanent job, on one condition. No man could want it. Think of a woman at a control board in 1944, alone in a studio at the end of a broadcast day, running a station a whole city depended on, and doing it well. She had signed something on her way in. She knew what it said. The people running those stations were not villains. They were managers with a schedule to fill and a war on, following an arrangement everyone around them accepted, and after 1945 they followed the next one. That is almost always how this works. None of it is hidden. It is in the Department of Labor's own survey of women in radio, in the text of a federal statute, in the job title a station director invented for the women keeping his station alive, and in the words of a broadcaster who explained that her position was safe because it did not compete with a man's. The industry called it wartime necessity. Necessity is a word with an expiry date. When it expired, so did she. Did your mother or grandmother hold a job that was only ever meant to be temporary? Tell me what she was told when it ended.